Good day, everyone. Today's lesson was assigned for Group 5. I am Christian J. Nazareno, your first reporter, and for this video, we'll be talking about the two novels of Rizal, the Nolimitangere and the Il Filibusterismo. Realizing the need for the Filipinos and the country to be known in Europe, Rizal proposed a book writing project to the Filipino members of the Círculo Hispano-Filipino. The book would deal on the socio-cultural and political aspects of life in the Philippines. The project was approved. However, most of the members wanted to write about the characters of the Filipino women. Majority of them were not interested in Rizal's proposed project. Despite of this, he did not lose hope. Using his talent and writing skills, Rizal started to write his masterpiece, The Nolimitangere. He managed to finish the first half of the novel in Madrid, one-fourth in Paris, and finished it in Germany. Rizal gets his inspiration in writing the Nolimitangere from the book of Harriet Beecher Stowe, titled Uncle Tom's Cabin. It is a book that tackles about racism and slavery of black Americans under the hands of white Americans, which Rizal at some point find it similar to how the Spaniards treated the Filipinos. The Nolimitangere was printed in Berlin. Rizal was charged 300 pesos for 2,000 copies. He has no money at the time, so his friend Maximo Viola offered to pay the amount, and the book was finally released in March 1887. Noli Me Tangere is a Latin phrase that Rizal took from the Bible, meaning touch me not. It can be found in John chapter 20 verse 17. To ready himself to any possibilities, Rizal studied Hebrew to enable him to interpret the Bible in its original text and be better prepared to defend any controversial religious issues that Noli Me Tangere might arise. Noli Me Tangere was first written in Spanish language before Charles Derbyshire translated and gave its alternative English title, The Social Cancer. After his journey in Europe, Rizal decided to return to Calamba for four reasons. First, he wants to help in the operation of his mother's eyes. Second, to help his family and the Filipino people. Third, to find out for himself how his writings affects the Filipinos and the Spaniards in the Philippines. And lastly, he wanted to find out why Leonora Rivera, his beloved, remained silent while he was in Rome. On June 29, 1887, Rizal wrote to his father about his homecoming. Rizal boarded the steamer Gemna on July 3, 1887, the same ship who brought him to Europe 5 years ago. He was the only Filipino among the passengers who could speak many languages, so he had a good time acting as interpreter for his companions. He also got along well with the other passengers by playing chess. He arrived in Manila on August 6 and was welcomed heartily by his parents, relatives, and friends. He found Manila the same as when he left 5 years ago. He stayed in the city for a short time to visit his friends and returned to Calamba on August 8. A few weeks after his stay in Calamba, Laguna, he received a letter from the Governor-General Emilio Terrero requesting him to come to Malacanang Palace to explain about the subversive ideas contained in the Noli Me Tangere. Rizal went to see the Governor-General. He denied the charges and explained that he merely exposed the truth, but he did not advocate subversion. Pleased by his explanation and curious about the controversial book, the Governor-General asked for a copy. The Governor-General assigned a cultured Spanish lieutenant named Don Jose Tabial de Andrade as his bodyguard, the brother of Jose Rizal's lawyer during his exile. Governor-General read the Noli Me Tangere and found nothing wrong with it. Nonetheless, he had it banned when the reports were submitted to him by the Commission of Censorship calling for its outright censorship. The banning of the Noli Me Tangere made it more popular, causing everybody among the masses to read it at night secretly. Now let's talk about the book cover of Noli Me Tangere. As what we can see, there are symbolism in it. We have cross, which symbolizes sufferings. We have the pomelo blossoms and laurel leaves, which means honor and fidelity. Next, we have the silhouette of a Filipino, which symbolizes Maria Clara. We have the burning torch, which means rage and passion. The sunflowers for enlightenment. The bamboo stalks that were cut down but grew back, which symbolizes resilience. Next is a man in a cassock with hairy feet, which is a representation of priest using religion in a dirty way. Next, we have chains for slavery and whips for cruelties. And lastly, the helmet of Guardia Civil, which is a representation of arrogance of those in authority. The next part will be the introduction of the characters of Noli Me Tangere, which will be discussed by the next reporter.
Characters: Crisostomo Ibarra, also known in his full name as Juan Crisostomo Ibarra y Magsaling, a Filipino who studied in Europe for 7 years, the love interest of Maria Clara, son of the deceased Don Rafael Ibarra, the main and most important character in the novel, manifesting in him the Filipino who acquired European idea through his education in Europe. Maria Clara de los Santos, Ibarra's sweetheart, the legitimate son of Father Damaso and Pia Alba. In her, Ibarra has fallen in love. She also married the Filipino woman of religious upbringing and orientation, and through her love to Ibarra, and she represents true loyalty and religiosity of the woman in real Filipino society. Elias, Ibarra's mysterious friend, a master voter, also a fugitive, he was referred to at one point as the pilot. He wants to revolutionize his country. In the past, Ibarra's grandfather condemned his grandfather of burning a warehouse, making Elias' father the fugitive he is. The character that Rizal plays to represent the Filipino masses who suffered from Spanish brutalities and abuse due to their powerless in the novel and in real Philippine social situation of that time. Father Damaso, also known as Damaso Berdolagas, a friar and Maria Clara's biological father, an antagonist in character and represent the in Christian works for the Catholic friars who are in church. Capitan Tiago, also known as Don Santiago de los Santos, the known father of Maria Clara but not the real one, lives in Binondo, an illegal opium leader who subsequently was landlord. He represented a businessman who used his money to work for him even in religious life and obligations. Sisa, the mother of Basilio and Crispin who became insane after losing his sons. She represented the unfortunate Filipino mothers losing her child. Pilosopong Tasio, also known as Don Anastasio, portrayed in the novel as pessimistic and mad by his neighbors. He portrays the rule of a philosopher who was completely misunderstood in many aspects. He argues with the belief of the Catholic Church and social changes and concerns in the novel. Doña Victorina, Victorina de los Reyes de Espadaña, a woman who possessed herself as a Peninsular's life of Don Tiburcio de Espadaña, known in the novel as a trying hard, rich woman who abhors anything that is Filipino and clings for Spanish way of life. This kind of character was manifested on some Filipinos of the time. Pedro, abusive husband of Sisa who loved cockfighting. Don Rafael Ibarra, a concerned citizen and property owner who was a father of Crisostomo Ibarra. Padre Damaso, who played an antagonist role, called him a heretic and filibustero due to his view on relating the liberalism in society. The schoolmaster, a teacher at San Diego whose view in the novel represented the weak and useless education in the Philippines. He attributes the problem from facilities and methods of learning that the friars implemented in the country. Tandang Pablo, the leader of the rebels, whose family was destroyed because of the Spaniards. Basilio, the elder son of Sisa. Crispin, the younger son of Sisa who died from punishment of the soldiers from the false accusation of stealing an amount of money. Padre Salve, also known in his full name as Bernardo Salve, a secret admirer of Maria Clara. The Alferez, chief of the Guardia Civil, mortal enemy of the priest for power in San Diego. Don Tiburcio, Spanish husband of Doña Victorina, who was limp and submissive to his wife. He also pretended to be a doctor. Capitan General, the most powerful official in the Philippines, a hater of secular priests of and corrupt officials, and a friend of Ibarra. Doña Consolacion, wife of Alvarez, another woman who passed herself as a peninsular, best remembered for her abusive treatment of Sisa. Being the only competitor of Capitan Tiago in guidelines, she did everything to pretend that she was really religious by showing off the public what she could contribute to the church.
Having completed his studies in Europe, Juan Crisostomo Ibarra came back to the Philippines after a 7-year absence. In his honor, Capitan Tiago threw a get-together party which was attended by the priors and other prominent figures. An unfortunate incident former create Padre Damaso belittled and slandered Ibarra, but Ibarra brushed off the insult and took no offense. Ibarra went to see Maria Clara, his love interest, a beautiful daughter of Captain. Their long-standing love was clearly manifested in this meeting, and Maria Clara cannot help but to reread the letter her sweetheart had written to her before he went to Europe. Before Ibarra left to San Diego, Lieutenant Ibarra, a guardian civil, rebelled to him that incident preceding the death of his father, Don Rafael Ibarra, a rich haciendero of the town. According to Lieutenant, Don Rafael was unjustly accused of being a heretic and filibuster. Father Damaso's animosity against Ibarra's father was aggravated by another incident, when Don Rafael helped out in a fight between a tax collector and a student fighting, and the former's death was blamed on him. Although it was not deliberate, suddenly all of those who thought ill of him surfaced with additional complaint. He was imprisoned, and just when the matter was almost settled, he got sick and died in jail. Still not with what he had done, Father Damaso arranged for Don Rafael's corpse to be dug up and transferred from the Catholic cemetery to the Chinese cemetery, because he thought it appropriate to allow a heretic such as Don Rafael to have a Catholic burial ground. Unfortunately, it was raining, and because of the bothersome weight of the cadaver, the men in charge of the burial decided to throw the corpse into lake. Revenge was not in Ibarra's plans. Instead, he carried out of his father's plans putting up a school, since he believed that education would pave the way to his country's progress. During the inauguration of the school, Ibarra would have been killed in a sabotage had Elias, a mysterious man who had warned Ibarra earlier of a plot to assassinate him. Instead, the hard killer met an unfortunate incident and died. The sequence of these events proved to be too traumatic for Maria Clara, who got seriously ill but was luckily cured by the medicine Ibarra sent to her. After the inauguration, Ibarra hosted a luncheon during which Father Damaso uninvited and gate crushing the luncheon. Again insulted him, Ibarra ignored the priest's insolence, but when the latter slandered the memory of his dead father, he was no longer able to restrain himself at Father Damaso, prepared to stab the latter for his imprudence. As a consequence, Father Damaso excommunicated Ibarra. Father Damaso took this opportunity to pursue the already hesitant father of Maria Clara to forbid his daughter from marrying Ibarra. The prior wished to marry a peninsular named Leonares who has arrived from Spain. With the help of Capitan General, Ibarra's excommunication was nullified and the Archbishop decided to accept him as a member of the church once again. But as fate would have it, some incident of which Ibarra had known nothing about was blamed on him, and he was wrongly arrested and imprisoned. But the accusation against him was overruled because during the litigation that followed, nobody could testify that he was indeed involved. Unfortunately, his letter to Maria Clara somehow got into the hands of the jury and was manipulated such it didn't become an evidence against him. Meanwhile, in Captain Tiago residence, a party was being held to announce the upcoming wedding of Maria Clara and Linares. Ibarra, with the help of Elias, took this opportunity and escaped from prison. But before leaving, Ibarra talked to Maria Clara and accused her for betraying him, thinking that she gave the letter to root her to the jury. Maria Clara explained to Ibarra that she will never conspire against him, but that she was forced to surrender Ibarra's letter to her in exchange for the letters written by her mother even before she, Maria Clara, was born. The child and that she was Maria Clara was therefore not the daughter of Captain Tiago, but of Father Damaso. Afterwards, Ibarra and Elias bounded a boat and left the palace. Elias instructed Ibarra to lie down, and the former covered the latter with grass to conceal the latter's presence. As luck would have it, they were spotted by their enemies. Elias thought that he could outsmart them and jump into the water. The guards rain shot on the person in the water, all the while not knowing that they were aiming at the wrong man. Maria Clara, thinking that Ibarra has been killed in the shooting incident, was greatly overcome with grief. Robbed of hope and severe disillusion, she asked Padre Damaso to confine her into a nunnery. Padre Damaso reluctantly agreed when Maria Clara threatened to take her own life, demanding the nunnery or death. Unbeknown to her, Ibarra is still alive and able to skip. It was Elias who had taken the shot. It was Christmas Eve when Elias woke up in the forest, gravely wounded and barely alive. It was in the forest that Elias found Basilio and his lifeless mother, Cesa.
El Filibusterismo. Rizal, who began writing El Filibusterismo in October 1887 in Calamba, Laguna, revised some chapters while he was in London and completed the book on March 29, 1891. Rizal wrote El Filibusterismo in dedication to the three martyred priests, Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, expressing conviction that their treatment and deaths at the hands of the Spanish authorities was unjust. Plots are poles apart compared with Nolomitangere, where people were encouraged to ask and aspire for change and liberation. In El Filibusterismo, Rizal urged the society to open its eyes to reality and rebel against the Spanish government for its oppression and abuse. In No Limit Hungry, there is aspiration, beauty, romance, and mercy. In El Filibusterismo, readers will feel its bitterness, hatred, and antipathy. The romance and aspirations are gone. Even the characters' personalities seem to have undergone radical change.
Characters of El Filibusterismo. Simon, the continuation of the character of Crisostomo Ibarra, distinguished as wealthy jeweler, bent on a starting revolution. Using his wealth, he encouraged the people who experienced abuse to join in his rebellion against the church and the government. Basilio, sees a son and was adopted by Capitan Tiago, boyfriend of Julie and aspiring doctor. Isagani, poet and Basilio's best friend, portrayed as emotional and reactive student leader. Paulita Gomez's boyfriend before being dumped for a fellow student Juanito Pelaez. Cabezang Tales, a former cabeza de barangay who was known as a Luzon Bandet Matanglawin. Don Custodio, a famous journalist who was asked by the students about his decision for the Academia de Castellano. In reality, he was a quiet and ordinary fellow who married a rich woman in order to be a member of Manila's high society. Paulita Gomez, the girlfriend of Isagani and the niece of Doña Victorina. The old India passes herself off as a Peninsulares. In the end, she and Juanito Pelaez were wed, and she dumped Isagani, believing that she will have no future if she marries him. Father Florentino, Isagani's godfather and the secular priest, was engaged to be married but chose to be a priest after being pressured by his mother. The story hinting at the ambivalence of his decision as he chose an assignment to a remote place, living in a solitude near the sea. Julie, Juliana de Dios, the girlfriend of Basilio, and the youngest daughter of Cabisang Tales. Benzaib, Abraham Ibanez is his real name. He is a journalist who thought he was the only one thinking in the Philippines. Placido Penente, a student of Santo Tomas who was very intelligent and Luisa but did not want, if not only by his mother's plea, to pursue his studies. Quiroga, a Chinese businessman who dreamed of being consul of a consulate of China in the Philippines. He keeps Simon's weapons inside his house. Tandang Celo, father of Cabezang Tales, he raised the sick and young Basilio after his mother Sisa died. Father Fernandez, the priest friend of Isagani. He promised Isagani that he and the other priests will give in to the students' demands. Attorney Pasta, one of the great lawyers of mid-Hispanic Manila. Captain General, the powerful highest official in the Philippines. Padre Sibilia, Hernando de la Sibilia, a Filipino friar and now vice rector of the University of Santo Tomas.
Synopsis of El Filibusterismo. The story in El Filibusterismo revolves around its main character, Simon, who is an affluent jeweler. Simon is actually Crisostomo Ibarra of the Noli, whom everyone thought had been killed by the Guardia Civil at Laguna de Bay. He had escaped, fled to Cuba, become wealthy, and made connections with influential Spanish officials. Upon his return to the Philippines after many years, he becomes very influential as the Governor General, who owes so much to him, consults him in making decisions. In reality, however, everything Simon does is just part of his grand plan to take revenge against the Spanish officials and rescue Maria Clara from the convent. Planning to stage a revolution, he smuggles arms and looks for followers, mainly from the exploited and abused natives. One of his recruits is Basilio, the son of Sisa, who with Captain Tiago's help was able to study in Manila. Simon also makes an alliance with the revolutionary group of Cabisang Tales, a former Cabisa de Barangay, who suffered maltreatments from the hands of the friars. Using his influence, Simon encourages corruption, decadence, and more oppressive government policies so that the citizens may become more infuriated. However, one night, the planned revolt was not carried out because Simon, upon hearing that Maria Clara died in the nunnery, decided not to give the signal for the outbreak of the uprising. Another plan was made some months later, at the venue of the wedding reception of Juanito Perez and Paulita Gomez. Simon planted many explosives, enough to kill the invited guests, primarily the friars and government officials. According to the plot, the big explosion shall be started by the gift he would give to the newlyweds at the reception, a kerosene lamp with an explosive. When the lamp flickers and someone turns the wick, it will result into a big explosion that will become a signal to the revolutionary troops to simultaneously attack all the government buildings in Manila. During the reception, Simon gives his gift to the newlyweds. Before hurriedly leaving the venue, he leaves a piece of mysterious paper bearing the message, "You will die tonight," signed by Juan Crisostomo Ibarra. Meanwhile, Isagani, the rejected lover of Paulita, is standing outside the reception. His friend Basilio tells him to leave the place because the lamp will soon blow up. When Father Salvi identifies the handwriting in the note and confirms that it was indeed Ibarra's, the guests begin to panic. When the lamp flickers, Father Irene tries to turn the wick up, but Isagani, wanting to save Paulita's life, rushes into the house, grabs the lamp and throws it into the river where it explodes. Simon's revolutionary plot was discovered and he is hunted by the Guardia Civil. He managed to escape but was seriously wounded. Carrying his jewelry chest, he finds shelter in the home of Padre Florentino. Learning of his presence in the house of the priest, the lieutenant of the Guardia Civil informs Padre Florentino that he will come in the evening to arrest Simon. The story ends when the priest throwing Simon's treasure into the sea so that they would not be used by the greedy. The priest hopes that when the right time comes, they would be recovered and used only for the good.